Hi, I'm Ray Holley, and today I'm going to tell you what I've learned from interviewing Linda about my guided journey, the companion journal to her book, Guided. When Linda first started doing these Thursday night sessions together with the help of her guides, she wrote all of the scripts without any input from me. And that was a good thing, since you really can't speak intelligently about something you don't understand or haven't experienced yet. The reason only she could do this is that she remembered and I didn't. But as we went through pages 1 through 18, the journey part, week by week, it drew me into remembering certain parts about my childhood. When she did this, I found myself doing a few things like 1, wondering about what I could remember, 2, wondering about what I couldn't remember, and 3, getting mad about some of the things that I did remember. In the early pages of taking this journey, what it drew out was me remembering certain painful parts of my life that I had forgotten or maybe wanted to forget, and how I handled them at that time. I was raised in a very strict Catholic environment. I was taught that you came into this world not as a new person who could do anything, but as a sinner, a bad person who now had to redeem themselves. I thought, you mean I'm not a good person? When did this happen? What did I do? And why did I have to pray for forgiveness? What was it I did wrong? I had a rebellious reaction, and I was mad at all of them who tried to force their beliefs onto me, because what they taught me to believe was totally wrong. I didn't come in as a bad person, a damaged person, a guilty person who had to beg for forgiveness for something I was told I did, or that was told that's just the way it is. I realized that the beliefs you have come from what our parents, the schools, and society taught us, and it was done to control us and let us think we can't make our own decisions. When you take this new awareness that shows up by going back and being an observer of your childhood in the journal and your earlier life, you can then write it down, and as part of your journal becomes something that becomes very useful. By observing, you can stop reacting emotionally and begin to feel the truth of a situation, making the distinction that emotions and beliefs are not the truth, and they are just an immediate reaction to a threat against your will. What I realized is that I wasn't an angry, defensive, rebellious, defiant, or a bad child. I was just an ill-equipped child who was taught the wrong things by the people and the institutions I was supposed to blindly trust. That what I would be writing into my journal now was from a perspective of what it was and not what I was told it was. Only then can you start to see what was really going on and stop taking it personally. And this is when the healing begins. It has a life of its own. That's what is meant when people say you must face your fears or look your fears right in the eye. You must face your fears without emotion and tell yourself you will no longer allow these observations to turn into beliefs that try to run or even ruin your life. And that's what my guided journey is all about. Now, while this is Linda's life, I too am just beginning this inner journey of remembering and then making the shifts to remembering my hidden knowledge that until now has been lying dormant most of my life. Although I felt those dreaded twinges of fear, like on page 1, I couldn't start writing easily about what really happened in my life until I got to page 14. And that's where I became intrigued and my search really began. It was when I started looking within instead of outside myself for answers. In other words, it was the first time that I was aware something was missing. After writing out what happened in my life on page 14, I was now on a roll, making the pages 15 through 18 easy for me to finish. Now that's when I went back to the pages I hadn't started writing in yet, pages 1 through 13. I went back to the first time that fear caught me off guard. Looking back, I realized I was an easy target. That one incident that happened when I was like 3 years old, and my reaction to it has influenced me ever since. Until I wrote in this journal what it was and what it felt like, did I identify this as the energy block that haunted me throughout my life. Growing up with a strict Catholic upbringing, my way of asking at the time was praying. When I prayed like I was told to do, whatever I prayed for never seemed to show up. What I realized is that I didn't believe in that process. After realizing this at that time in my life, everything related to this religion was a ceremony of just going through the motions. I've only talked about page 1, fear, but once I could identify that first fear and write it out, could I see how it has been affecting my life and could easily see how it influenced other decisions. Who could I ask? Who could I trust? When I found myself talking to myself more, who was I really talking to? That was my natural way of asking. It felt right.
All right, Ray Holley. And this is Linda.
Linda gets to be the off-camera talent this week, huh?
Ray, you're in the hot seat this time.
Ooh.
Hi, you guys. Okay, Ray, are you ready for my questions? I hope you are.
Well, I hope I am.
So what we're going to do first is we're going to start with when you worked with the journey part of the journal.
Right.
Part 2, page 1 through 18. You started on page 14.
I did.
And I think I know why you did that, but we're going to kind of let you bring that to light.
Page 14, that is the search begins.
The search begins.
And that's about the time when you feel an emptiness and you start looking for answers. And you look for them.
You did.
I did. And you start looking outside of yourself up to that point, and you weren't getting the right answers. You know, nothing in society or your family or the schooling that you had brought you any answers, so you start wondering on your own.
Right. Wondering and wandering.
Wondering and wandering.
Okay. And that's what you did. You remember doing that.
Right.
Okay, so at that point in your life, page 14, that's where you started, you really connected with the journey part of this journal.
Right.
That's where you started writing, and you wrote all the pages to the end, to page 18. And then you went back to the first page.
That's right.
Okay.
All the way back to the beginning.
Now we're going to find out why that happened after we navigate you back through this maze, all right?
Okay.
And this is the same thing that we will be doing with you guys when... I'm going to scoot over here with you so they can see me. This is going to be the same thing that we're going to be doing with you guys. You see us together now, huh, you guys? Isn't that a handsome couple? Okay, that we'll be doing with you guys after this Facebook Live. In other words, next Thursday. Next Thursday, we're going to invite you guys to do and brave what Ray just is about to do, where I'm going to question him about page 1 through 18, kind of breeze through it, but it's going to give you a sense of what you can, how to go about starting to ask questions and ask us questions so that we can walk you through it and really get you through the journey part so you can get your life back, so you can make this connection, like I've talked about before, to your guides, okay, and start living in this world and this world, all right? So that's next week, and we're going to look forward to you guys coming in and participating with us, okay? So I'm going to start with Ray on page 1 of part 2. And that is the hardest one to start out with, It's fear. And the reason it's the hardest is because fear is, of course, the hardest thing for anyone to have to confront. And it's the first fear hit you when you were really, really small. That little child is about, what, 2.5 years old, two
Right.
and a half. And that's about the first time it hits 2.5, 3 years old. It hit you when you were how old? 3, right?
About 3. Mhm.
Okay. And Ray, what was that fear?
That fear was being bullied in my neighborhood. I would ride my bike from my house down the sidewalk to the corner, and before I could get to the corner, the neighborhood kids who were older and much bigger than I was
And bullies.
and I was an easy target at that point. I was riding my tricycle, and they would confront me and all gather up around me and tease me and knock me off my bike and into the mud puddles and into the dirt. And
Well, you were like a cat with a mouse.
they were like a
they
cat
were the
with a-
cat,
yeah,
and you were the mouse.
and they were just torturing me.
Well, you were fun to torture,
Right, right.
Okay, so that was their reality. That was what they have to grow through, all right, in their own life. But in your case, that was your first fear,
Right.
all right? And how did that fear make you feel?
Like I wouldn't want to take chances.
Okay,
And was today a good day for me to try to ride my tricycle down to the corner or not? Or where were they? I tried to see where they were, but they heard me. The dogs barked, whatever, but
whatever triggered it.
whatever triggered it. And
So you were heightened. Your sensitivity was heightened about what would cause them to be alarmed that you were outside.
Right. I started to become real aware.
Okay, but aware because you were afraid,
Right,
and you
and
you were in fear.
Yeah, and the fear kind of turns into paranoia.
It did for you.
Yep.
Okay, so it was that type of feeling that followed you in your early childhood.
Right.
You were cautious. You were a little on the paranoid side. You were always looking around to make sure that somebody wouldn't catch you off guard.
Right.
That type of feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how did that maneuver? Okay, so fear.
Well, I think it's interesting right here underneath the little girl's face on page 1. Fear.
Little boy.
It says shame could surface.
Right.
I was ashamed.
That's a good response. Now, why were you ashamed?
I was ashamed that I wasn't brave enough to go down there and ride my bike that direction.
Okay, now that right there lets you know that there's more to you than this fear. That was the first bit of guidance. Do you realize that that was the first bit of guidance you got? That you were more powerful than that? Because for you to have that shame even show up, how could you do that? How could shame show up?
Yeah.
It's not something that it didn't make sense in your life at that time, at that young time in your life. So it showed up because you remembered yourself but didn't know that's what it was.
Right.
Do you realize that now?
No, I realize it now. I didn't then.
Yeah, and that's what that higher self of you that knew that you were bigger than that, better than that.
Right.
You connected with it because you weren't separate from your higher self at that point, and you recognized that you were indeed bigger than that fear, than those bullies, than all of that.
Right.
Okay, so then what, Ray? What your notes? Then what?
It kind of turned into a paranoia that followed me throughout my life. Fear of taking a risk. Fear of hopping on that tricycle and riding down the street.
So how long did that fear follow you? That's 3.5 years old.
Probably until, well, I was always at fear of not being good enough.
Not being good enough.
Right.
Okay.
Not being good enough.
So that's what really was derived out of it.
Yeah, I think as I got a little older and I got into elementary school, I took music lessons like most kids did in those days. Took piano lessons and took for a long time. But I was always afraid that I wasn't going to play it right. I wasn't going to study it enough. I was going to get to the recital and make a mistake in front of everybody.
So when you played, didn't baseball come before that?
Baseball about the same time.
So how did it feel when you played baseball? Did you think you could perform with that?
No, I didn't get picked as a starting player at every game.
Okay, so what was your fear with regard to sports? Baseball.
That you weren't good enough.
That you weren't good enough.
I was
Okay.
small. I was a small kid.
Okay, so he's not small now. We're not going to
No,
feel sorry for him.
I'd show him now.
So anyway, okay, so that's where the fear started. This is what Ray was able to identify when he was writing in his journal, which is different than this one. This is mine, and when, in realizing that, when's the first time you felt power over this fear of not being good enough, which is what was set off at 3 years old when you were knocked off the trike, and okay.
Well, power over bullies, where I
No.
didn't feel afraid of bullies.
Yeah, or just power over being fearful. When's the first time that you put yourself in a position where you overcame? You were forced to overcome the fear,
All right.
and how did you do?
Well, I had always had an interest in music, so when I was about 9 years old, I taught myself how to play the guitar, and by the time I was 12, I was playing in a band and playing in nightclubs.
12 years old.
12 years old.
Okay,
Couldn't
so
drink, but
okay,
could play.
So, how did that feel? How did you overcome your
Well-
fear at that 12-year-old time in your life?
I didn't always overcome the fear right away. There's always the fear of, are you going to play the songs right? Are you going to do this right? But when you see that people are paying money to come and see you, and whoever owns the club hires you back for the next week, or the week after that, and the week after that, then you get over the fear.
Right, and so did that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that happened, and then what?
In the music area,
Yeah. You're on a roll here,
on a
right?
roll, yeah. Playing in nightclubs at 12. I kept the band together for 10 years.
Wow.
And we recorded for 2 major labels.
And when did you cut your first record?
Oh, when I was 12.
What?
12.
12
I
years
was a
old.
rock star at 12.
I'm telling you, Ray. Okay, so what page in this journal did you start writing on that you felt that you were inclined to start writing on? It was page 14, right?
14.
14.
Which is The Search Begins.
Okay. How old were you when you started being a musician? 12, right?
12. Professional.
And how old were you at this time in your life when you wrote in the journal on page 14?
Probably 15,
Okay.
16-ish.
Around that
in high
time,
school.
when the search began. Okay, so just before that, you got a little jump start out of your fear. You got a
Got
real
a jump start
opportunity.
on confidence there.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had really, that's what was going on. Now you got to play your music, which you really to this day really love to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the guidance that guided you in that direction.
Right.
Pulled you out of that fear.
It did.
Okay, that's the first shot out of fear.
Right.
What was the second one? The kids beat you up. The bullies
yeah.
knocked you off your trike when you were 3.5 years old.
Right. When I got into high school, I studied martial arts for a long time in high school and college.
Okay, well, and were you any good at it?
I was very good at it.
Okay, and
So I kind of had a reputation that, the bullies in high school wouldn't pick on me, and they didn't.
okay, well, that solved that problem.
Right.
Okay, so musician, 12 years old, professional musician, a recording artist.
Yep.
That got you over fear. And then here you are in high school, you took martial arts up, and you got respect from the kids. They didn't dare try to fight you.
Yeah. See, I was still small though in high school. I wasn't big enough to be on the teams. I wasn't
Oh.
big. I couldn't play football. I was not
But they still had enough respect for you
to stay away.
not to mess with you.
Right.
Okay, so you're only in high school, and that's why, here's my suspicion. That's why you started writing on page 14 of the journal. Because at that point, you had you had reclaimed your personal power back.
It felt comfortable to start here at this
Right,
page.
right. Because you were in your power, Ray.
Right.
And so writing from page 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 was a breeze for you because
Right.
at that point, the very first thing on page 1 of this part 2 of the journal, Fear, you had overcome it.
Right. Although I couldn't isolate it at that point, I did once I got back to page 1.
Now, what do you mean by you couldn't isolate it at that time?
When I started here, I didn't know what that fear was.
I know. But once you went through page 1 through 18, then you went back to page 1.
Right, 14 through 18, and then I went back to page 1 and I was able to identify what it was.
Exactly what it was.
Right.
That one incident that started the whole cascading process of letting fear control you
Right.
until you stepped into being a musician in a professional situation
Right.
where you
Playing
were
in front of people,
right.
not worrying about it
Right.
anymore.
Right.
Were you good enough? Well, if they're paying you and they pay you more and they keep hiring you back, then you must be good enough.
Right. That was it.
So
That was it.
and
Okay.
I learned that pretty early. I mean,
Yes, you
12
did.
years old.
Well, that's why you started on page 14 because that's where your power came back to you. All right.
Right.
So when you started on Fear, let's go back to the first one, Ray. On Fear.
Fear, okay.
So Fear, when you started filling out this page after you had already gotten page 14 through 18 under your belt,
Mhm.
and you had a solid feeling for yourself and where you were going in your life, and you came back to this and you wrote this in here, how did that make you feel?
Well, a little scared at first,
You mean scared to write in there?
Yeah, but if you follow the instructions on this page, it says, when fear blocks the learning, when the fears that block the learning are removed, only then can your guides reach you. And it tells you to breathe and release the pressure, and then just think about what that first fear was and write it down. Writing it down is the hard part,
Okay, that was the hard part.
and then how it felt.
Okay,
Because-
why was it hard though, Ray? Explain to the viewers why that was hard.
Because you don't want to admit you're embarrassed about it. You're ashamed about it.
Okay, so you're writing your bloody past down on paper.
Yeah, you're writing down what you were afraid of at
What
that
your
age.
vulnerabilities and your weaknesses.
Yeah, and how it felt is even worse.
Oh.
You're ashamed. It hurt because of what the other kids did, but it hurts now when you think about how did it feel, and you were ashamed of it.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Did you know when you were 3.5 years old that you were ashamed? You did.
yeah, sure.
You just didn't know why you knew it.
It's something you brought with you.
It's something that it's your connection
Right.
to the other side that you came from that let you know that you are not weak.
Right.
Right. Okay, so once you wrote this out on page 1, Fear,
Right.
and you went to Ask.
Ask is the next one.
Okay.
Page 2.
Yep.
Ask.
Yeah. And what's the little caption under it say, Ray?
It feels like self-talk.
Okay. Now, for you, when you talked about it in the early part of this video, you said for you, in your upbringing, you were raised in a strict Catholic upbringing,
Yep.
that you were taught and told that you pray for what you want, right?
Yeah, that's how you ask.
That's how you ask. Okay. And how did that work out?
Well, it did. You're told that that's how it's supposed to work, and if it doesn't work, well, it just wasn't supposed to be. You followed this ceremony of saying your prayers and asking, and a lot of times it felt like begging, and you didn't get what you wanted.
And that's how it felt for you.
Right.
Okay, so how long did you attempt to do that to see if it would actually work?
Probably till I was in elementary school. About the time I started teaching myself things.
And how old were you, Ray?
7, 8, 9.
Okay, 7, 8, 9. And then what changed?
It does feel like self-talk. You start asking yourself a lot of questions, and you don't realize that you're asking. You're more or less thinking that you're wondering about these things.
And you're just kind of communicating some thought in your head.
It turns into running scenarios in your head over and over and over, and here's scenario A, and then what if that doesn't work? You better have scenario B, and what if that doesn't work? You better have scenario C.
And that's what it felt like.
Right.
And you didn't realize what you were really doing is
It's a logical wondering.
right. It does. It's a check and balance.
If
It's a
this,
what if.
then that, and then if that, then this, and you follow the one that feels right.
Right. The one that feels right. Now you're feeling you're not emotional about a situation. You're listening to what you're feeling.
Well, you think you're talking to yourself, so you can't get emotional about it because you don't want to get mad at yourself. But you really
that's interesting.
What dawns on you eventually is that you're not talking to yourself. You're talking to your higher self, or you're talking to your spirit guides or your angels, and at that point you make the discovery that there is somebody else out there that you're talking to. That you're not crazy. People hear you talking to other people, and they, in those days, they'd lock you up.
Okay, so what made you realize that there was someone else there and that you were not all alone?
Because you get answers. The answers become easier and easier. They come
through faster.
They come through faster.
And you just have to learn to trust that those are the answers, that you asked the questions and got those answers.
Right, and it wasn't you.
And it didn't come from you.
Yeah. Because if you had the answer, you wouldn't have been asking yourself questions.
Right. So did you realize that you were being prompted to even ask the question in the first place by your guides?
I'm sure they put that thought in your head.
Oh yeah. Because some of these ideas you had, did they feel like they were your ideas, or did they just feel genius to you?
Well, I think the natural inclination is if you have a genius answer, you want to think it came from you. But
or a
most
genius
of the time
idea.
Or an idea. Eventually, you just realize that you really aren't that smart, and they're coming from somebody else.
They're coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So what did it feel like when you first realized that?
Well, you realize you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I realized.
And what did that cause you to do?
Ask them more questions.
And search, right?
Search.
Yeah, that's why when the search begins. So that's why that one inspired you so much, because your search really did begin at that point in your life, mid-teens.
I became very studious of things outside of school. School was easy for me. It was always easy. I didn't have to do my homework. I didn't, those kind of things. I always did well on tests. I did enough to maintain a good average.
Right.
But I spent a lot of time when I wasn't working. I had a job. I was playing in a band. I spent a lot of time studying on my own.
Studying what, Ray?
I studied other religions at first. Since I realized the Catholic religion didn't work out very well for me. I thought maybe other religions were different, but they're pretty much all the same. And then I studied alternative health things, like things that weren't medical, that have been used for thousands of years, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, things like that. I started studying herbs and nutrition, and I still do to this day.
Yeah, you do. In fact, Ray has a wellness business, so he honors that part of himself. So what it did is this, what basically happened with Ray here is when he first hit it, when he was a musician, professional musician at 12 years old, and then started taking martial arts in high school, then he had his confidence. He was solid in himself. And in doing that, it started to bring out the natural gifts that he brought with him into this lifetime, which was the healing, the herbs, the music, the physical training, the martial arts, and all that. So it brought those things out in you. You just started flourishing. Really.
I did. I started taking risks.
Yeah, you did. You weren't afraid. You were not driven by fear anymore. Although you always have been, sensible and somewhat cautious. You do look it over before you jump in, but you aren't afraid of a risk, which is fear. I mean, if you're stuck in fear, you cannot take a risk. You absolutely are frozen.
Right. You'll never take a chance.
Right. So you passed that test.
With flying colors.
Yeah, you did. And you had one successful experience after another. It was very good. So what this thing about asking? So it went from fear to asking,
Right.
and asking really was. Would you say asking was really when your search did really start? If you think back, I know you
Yeah, yeah. You ask
you
yourself.
start wondering,
Yeah. You don't think it's asking at the time.
right?
You start
right.
wondering about things, then you start investigating things out of curiosity.
That's my point. So that's the point. Is once you got over the fear, everything else took care of itself. That's why, even though fear is the hardest part to get through, and it's page 1 of the journey, because
Right.
because it is the first thing that happens in our lives that knocks us off course. And ever since that fear, you just you take things personally. You doubt yourself. You try to fit in. You want to be liked. You pretend. You lie to yourself, and only to get more lost. And once you exhaust all those attempts to negotiate the fear rather than solve it, you find yourself stepping out of it. You find yourself not even telling anybody that's what you're going to do, but you do it. You try, you pick that instrument up and you play that guitar for the first time.
Yeah.
You play that piano and you play it when the teacher's not there.
Right.
And you play it the way you want to play it.
That's right.
And you start to get over you've got to learn the basic scales and everything like that. But
You can't worry about the repercussions. You can't allow fear, which is basically thinking about what could happen,
right.
dominate your life.
Right.
And you have to find little ways to break it,
And be okay with not always having the answers,
Yeah.
or not being perfect.
Not being the best,
Right.
or not being good enough. I mean, later on, when I was in my 20s, I think I learned to take risks.
And what did you do, Ray?
I got a job right across the street from the horse race track.
And oh, that's funny. And what did you do?
I spent a lot of time at the racetrack betting on horses.
You did. Okay, so that's a good one. That's a good one.
I mean, gambling's a risk.
Oh, it's totally risky.
It's totally risky.
But it can be a fool's game, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that work out for you?
Well, I didn't know anything about betting on horses, so I studied, like I always do.
Okay.
I'm like you, teach myself everything.
Right.
So I studied and, thought I had a few theories, and I'd go to the racetrack probably 3 nights a week or more. And I would always bet. I didn't get carried away. I'd bet the $2 bets. I'd never bet more than 2 or 3
Now, what
tickets.
was this? The early 70s, Ray?
This was the 70s.
Early 70s.
Early 70s,
Uh-huh.
right. And I would bet $2, on 3 horses. And that's it. I'd always bet the same amount of money on each race. And if I won money, that just went in the other pocket. But I'd spend like
So you
$6 on each race.
So you had a discipline
I had a discipline.
and a tolerance.
Right.
Okay. So how did you feel when you won?
Great.
How did you feel when you lost?
I didn't beat myself up for it. There's always a reason, why you lost. A lot of it's out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah.
The horse
So
didn't feel well.
what did you listen to when you made these bets?
Gut feelings. I'd watch all the horses come prancing by, and I'd study them and see which ones I lined up with their energy.
So you went by your feeling.
I did.
Well, you were listening to your guidance, my dear.
There it is.
You were. And see, that was part of it. You were connecting with your guides, with your higher self, with that inner knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And you were practicing that, let's call it a lost art. Your
Yeah.
intuitive muscles. You were building your intuitive muscles, right?
Yep.
And so that's what was going on with you when you were
In my 20s.
in your early 20s.
Right.
Okay.
I learned how to take risks.
You learned how to take risks, but you actually learned how to do that as a musician at 12 years old.
Right.
All right?
Get out in front of people and not be afraid of what they thought or said or...
And that's big. That's big. That's a huge... That's like going out and singing and hoping and praying that you'd sing it well,
Yeah.
that you don't have a problem. So, and then high school, and then the horse races, and then what next?
As far as risk taking, my 40s, probably. There was like 20 years from my early 20s. There was like 20 years of normal life, where you worked.
And you try, and okay, can I say something?
Sure.
Would you say that you're one of those people in that 20-year span between 20 and 40 that you did things the way you were told to do them and taught to do them?
Not really.
Okay.
I had a job. Plus, I still played music,
Right.
and I taught music. But I took a risk by leaving Ohio and moving to California for a job.
How old were you?
26, maybe.
Okay.
Mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
I quit a job and took a risk on another job. Had no experience in it, but I took that job and I did well. And then I took another job I knew nothing about as a consultant, and got very good at it. And that job led to another move across the country.
Okay,
Those
so
are all risks.
It is, and it was all a result of overcoming your fear at that time in your life when you were a musician at 12 years
Right,
old.
and you felt, maybe, am I good enough?
That's right, and you overcame that. Am I good enough?
Once you admit to yourself that you are good enough, then you're more apt to take a bigger risk.
Right. Then you're getting your sea legs under you. You're living up to the potential that you came in with,
Right.
using your gifts and talents. Right.
Right.
Right. So ever since then, taking a risk for you, you still might come across things that you haven't done before that might feel, uneasy, but you still haven't. You were able to handle it.
Right.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. We've lived through some of this together, and I can vouch for that. So we move through the fear, and it's all in the fear, you guys. If you don't solve the first thing that knocked you down, that first fear,
Right.
then your life goes in one direction. If you do solve
Fear-based.
it's true. But if you solve that fear and you find you rediscover your personal power that you came in with, and you all came in with it, then you're on that track right there, and you are solid. You might even make things may not always work out the way you wanted them to, but that doesn't stop you from taking another risk.
Yeah,
It doesn't traumatize you.
No, here's a good example.
Yeah.
Being a self-employed musician for 15 years, okay, that's a risk. And not having a stable, steady job where you got a paycheck, but made great money at it, got paid every week, and then taking a real job, because now you have obligations. You maybe got married, you have a family, things like that. Now you need a little more money than just what
You
you're
need
making.
stability.
You need stability, so you take that risk, and you tend to have 20-year span of having a job and taking care of all that responsibility, and eventually some of these artistic, creative things that you did for money at the time kind of fall away, and then one day, that stable job, you get fired. You lose it.
That's what happened to you.
Right. Now, do you go out, do what society tells you should do, and get another job,
And you had just had a child.
and just had a child? Or do you take a risk and start your own business?
What did you do?
I
Ray?
started my own business.
Yeah.
Not right away. I thought about it for a while,
How long?
4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and started my own business by myself.
And how did that work out for you, Ray?
I tripled my income the first year.
What was the feeling that caused you to take action and do that?
I got tired of doing nothing. I got tired of thinking about it.
You got tired of thinking about it.
Should I, shouldn't I?
Okay.
Should I, shouldn't I?
Okay, you just got tired of doubting yourself.
Right.
Okay. So when you got tired, what caused you to feel that feeling where you could no longer tolerate doubting yourself?
I was going nowhere. I had other job offers where I'd have to move across the country again, and
Okay.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to do that.
So you didn't want to chase a job anymore.
Right. I liked where I lived. My family liked where we lived. We developed friends.
Yeah.
I didn't want to pick up and move.
Yeah.
2,000 miles.
So you wanted more control over your life.
Right, right. You know, it was kind of what's the worst that could happen. You could end up with no job,
Okay.
just like you are now.
Okay, so that was what came through to you.
Right.
When you let the fear go, the fear and the doubt, when you released it, because you had a lot of pressure on you. You had a baby,
Yeah.
a little child.
Well, you have to. There's another component. You have to take action.
I know.
That's the other part.
Well,
I mean,
that's
you
what-
can ask and you can receive guidance, but if you don't take action on it, then you're not committed. You don't have anything, a precedent to base it on,
And there you have it, people. You've got to take action.
You have
That's
to-
it.
you have to
That-
ask, receive,
Right.
take action. But in the action I took, once I decided, well, I better start my own business, is I went down and got a business license, and I started buying all the equipment I would need to start my business.
So you didn't have any. You didn't have any doubt once you stepped into it.
Right. Now, I got the business license. I bought all the technology and all the equipment that I would need to start my business, and it was all set up and I was ready to start on Monday. And doubt creeped in. We had a horrible storm, electrical storm, and lightning struck right outside my house and ruined all the equipment I just bought.
Ooh, now could that have been an omen, Ray? Is that what you felt?
Yeah, exactly.
And what happened then?
I started thinking, well, is this going to be for me? Is this a sign
Right.
that things are not going to go right?
And what came through?
What came through is go out and replace the equipment.
Okay, that's interesting. And you did that.
Yep.
And then?
Business took off, tripled my income in 1 year.
So why do you think that power surge happened and knocked out your brand new equipment?
Somebody reminding me that you may not be a success. Try to trigger that old fear.
And so you were being tested.
Yeah.
Okay. And you passed the test.
Apparently.
Okay, you know why that happened, in my opinion? You spent 4 months doubting yourself.
Right.
And you did not like doing that, running through your money while you
Right.
spent time in doubt, right? Eating what kind of pancakes?
Taking my son to school and stopping at my favorite restaurant, eating blueberry pancakes. You only do that for so many months.
So you guys, this is an interesting journey Ray's had. And this is how the journal, looking back and writing in your own journal,
Right.
in page 1 through 18, how did it really flush out, Ray? What did you really get from this? An overview, because we're just getting to the end of this. How would you summarize this journal in terms of your experience using it and applying it and recognizing what happened?
Okay, one thing is it doesn't pressure you ever to choose. It's not do this or do that.
The journal.
The journal, it triggers things. The text on each page triggers things to help you formulate how to ask, what to ask for, what to think about, and be able to recognize it when it shows up right away.
What do you mean? We're talking about
The
writing.
fears, writing in the journal.
Oh,
Okay, if you're asking,
you mean revealing what happened?
revealing, yeah, revealing what happened. What was that first fear? Even though it's something you pushed down,
Right.
that you don't like to think about it, that you're embarrassed about, that
And the thing that made you feel the worst about unearthing it and looking and bringing it to the surface and writing it in your journal
right,
was how you were ashamed of yourself.
right. You don't want to write a book about everything you're ashamed about.
Or what caused you to get
Right.
everybody. Don't you think everybody gets challenged with fear? You weren't unique.
Oh no, everybody has it. It's the big thing that is programmed into you by society, your parents. Everything's a punishment. Everything's
Right.
a guideline. Okay, if you don't do this, you're going to get spanked. If you don't do this and lead this kind of life, you're not going to heaven. You're going to hell. And
The threats.
it's all threats. It's all based in fear,
Right.
and it keeps you
In line.
in line, keeps you from taking a risk.
Right.
It keeps
Stepping
you from,
out of line.
It keeps you from ever understanding and knowing who you are, what you're capable of,
Right.
and how quickly you can turn your life around once you get out of that fear.
Right.
So,
So going back and reviewing your life,
mm-hmm.
because your life worked out real well, Ray.
Seems to. How do you like me so far?
Your life worked out real well.
It did.
So when you went back through this and you worked through these pages,
Mm-hmm.
how did it benefit you? Because your life worked out real well.
Mm-hmm.
There were some bumps in the road. There were some divorces. There were some, family stuff that went on. There was, there's stuff,
Yeah.
that goes on. And how did it summarize?
Well, the biggest thing that is the biggest revelation is you realize you are not alone. You're always getting guidance.
Right, that's what you realized. Stepping back,
Right.
you realized when you thought it was self-talk, when you were asking,
Right. I thought maybe that some of those great ideas were me.
it's just interesting. You had all that help, and now you really know how to make that help work for
Right,
you.
right. And I can teach other people how to do it.
Right.
That's the best thing you realize. But you really do go back and find things that you were afraid of that you really should have never been afraid of. Once you look at them for what they were.
What you did is you gave it too much power.
Right. You gave it too much power. You gave these people who were your parents or your school teachers or your superiors or you gave them too much power.
Right. Exactly. You took it too seriously.
Right. You took everything that they said as the law
Right.
or, the rules
Right.
or what's right and
The
what's
be
wrong.
all end all.
Yeah, what's right and what's wrong. Well,
Right.
let me be the judge of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
For me, in my life.
Right. And figure it out with trusting the information that comes through you. Calming down enough so you can receive that guidance.
Yeah, it's important when you write in your journal. I think you need to be alone in a quiet place.
And calm down.
Right. You can't have chaos going on around you.
Because Ray, when we did the first page of part 2,
Mm-hmm.
you got kind of riled up when you
I got mad.
when you interviewed me.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And it happened because you didn't expect it. I wrote this, and that's the first time you heard what I wrote.
Right.
And when you started interviewing me, based on what I was writing in each one of these, it brought things out in you, making it, really bringing it to light to you, as far as, something went wrong there.
Yeah.
Something waylaid you.
Something waylays a lot of people, and they're really a new person, a baby, shouldn't have any fears.
Or shame.
Right. What do they have to be ashamed about?
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's the first inclination that's your guidance letting you know that you are indeed better than that this doesn't belong to you. This is being imposed upon you. And, you just need to, if as a baby, and when that first fear hit us, if we just took the time not to panic.
Right.
When you got knocked off that trike when you were 3 and you panicked,
Right.
it changed the course of your life for a while.
Right. It did.
I know. And you were lucky enough and blessed enough to have that 12-year-old experience to be a musician, wow, and play professionally and cut a record and everything and work through the greatest fear there is in standing in front of somebody, maybe like somebody might be a public speaker.
Right.
Public speaking is one of the most fearful things a person can imagine doing. Well, playing an instrument, being a musician, that's stressful, or a comedian, or any of that. That's very stressful.
Right.
So you overcame it right there, Ray.
Yep.
And from then on, so it's all about taking that first step out of fear and absolutely not letting it run you, and overcoming the fear. When you do it, don't you agree that once you experience that first step out of fear, that whatever caused that fear and needed that fear then needed to be healed, that it heals itself.
Yeah, it's kind of like automatically fixes itself right there.
It does. It does. It's not like you have to go heal something.
Right.
What you have to do is do something to step out of the fear, take a risk.
You have to acknowledge it. That's all you have to do.
Well, that's what you did when you wrote it in here.
And it heals itself.
And once you acknowledge it, you see it for what it is, and you're not writing it from being the victim
Not a
or
victim.
the emotion of it at the time.
Right.
You're writing it from the feeling and what you know happened there, the truth, the facts, and from an observant point of view.
Right.
And then you can identify exactly what it was. Otherwise, you just keep yourself where you're at.
That's it.
I know. So you guys, this is the summary of my guided journey and Ray's experience with the journal and using it, what he learned, and what it was like, Ray.
It was a lot more intense than I thought it would be.
You mean actually taking the journey, doing the work?
Well, yeah.
Or doing the interviewing?
First, guided and knowing what you went through in your life, and then dredging up all those things again and putting them under a microscope, basically.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those things made me mad.
I know they did. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah. So now that you realize...
And they happened to you. And then I started looking at, well, hey, some of these things happened to me too.
Right, exactly right.
Now I'm really mad.
I know. But how do you feel now that you've flushed it out and you've worked through it?
I feel great. It's great. It's great knowing. It says right up in the front. Where's that saying by Maya Angelou?
Yeah. Maya Angelou
Right.
wrote this one little quote that's just brilliant and so appropriate.
She said,
Put it onto the light.
"You can't really know where you are going until you know where you have been." True.
And that's what this is about. And once you know where you've been and you can identify what happened there, you realize the decisions that you made throughout your life, why you made them, but then you really realize how you have power over all that going forward.
And part 2, the part that we've been going over for the last 19 weeks, it says, connecting the dots in your life, reflecting back on how you got to where you are right now.
Okay. And you guys, I'm going to come back over with Ray here.
Okay.
Okay. And so, when we talked with you guys earlier about what we're going to do next week, we're going to be inviting you guys in to participate like Ray did, to help work you back through that process, whatever process you went about going through, to write in your own journey, part 2, page 1 through 18. You might even be just on page 12 through 16 right now. That's okay. That's okay, because as we work with you and help you really look at this and bring these things out in your life like we were doing with Ray today, you'll be able to continue the process and finish the writing and go back to the start and really pick out what it was back there that affected your life, that you might even be aware of what it is, but you really haven't looked into it as deep as we're going to look into it and help move you through it and raise the bar, okay, and make this connection with your guidance.
And I think what would really help a lot of people, a lot of them didn't get in at the beginning. They got the journal only the last month or so.
Right.
Go back on Linda's website where it says blog, and go down
LindaDeir.com.
LindaDeir.com, go to blog, and then go down in the right-hand corner where it says categories, and click on My Guided Journey, and you will find a video for each of the 18 pages.
That we did.
Right.
Where Ray was sitting over here interviewing me, I was sitting over here. And I was answering his questions. And we had a theme for each one of these to really get you guys in there and make it possible for you to write in this journal the way that you need to write it. You need to write it from the truth center, from what you know, what you brought with you. And when you write it out, write it like your guides are right with you, okay? Because they were with you when all that happened. So until you can identify what it is and write it, plant it into this world and write it into your journal, only you're going to see that. Can you really, really identify it, and then with the gifts and the talents you brought with you in this lifetime, can then apply them and actually perform on them instead of just letting them stay dormant, because this will bring out what is blocking your way, or where you're really doing well, like Ray, page 14. Ray's life went straight up.
Yeah, watch all the videos and write down any places where you're stuck. Make a note of where you're stuck, why you're stuck, and bring that question next week. And let's address some of those questions. Why am I stuck on this part? I did well on these pages, and I got to here, and I got stuck.
Right.
Those are the things we're going to help you with.
Right, because quite honestly, while Ray was working with this, there were moments when he said, you know, Linda, help me out with this. I need someone to help me flesh this out because I'm stuck. And I said, okay, well, let's do that. And then, you know, we'd go back and forth, and he, with his own words, figured it out. He figured it out, but he needed a place he needed someone to bounce it off of. That's what we do with you guys, okay? To pull it out of you, to pull it through so you can start living the life you intended, all right?
And don't forget about Guided. Fabulous book.
Well,
written by my favorite author.
You know what, you guys, what happens is this gets the ball rolling. When you see how I did it, that's really what this is, then you know that, grab that journal, you know that when you do this, that's why this was created. Because I had so many people, and have had so many people ask me, how do I do this, Linda? How do I connect with my own guides and my own angels and my higher self and me? How do I do this? This is how you do it, right here.
And this is free.
Yeah. So
Free download.
on my website. It's on the homepage, right on the right side. Just click on the free download, and you can print it out in either the half size, the little mini binder, or the full size, which is 8.5 by 11 standard paper.
You have a lot of fear like I do. I have the big one.
You do. Oh, you do.
And don't forget, we're coming up on a holiday season. Books make great gifts.
They do. And this book comes, I did the book in audiobook, Kindle, and paperback format on Amazon. That's where you can find it, you guys. Or Audible, or iTunes.
And you'll find us where next week? Right here.
Right here, same place.
Same place, same time.
Same time, your time. We're
Right,
going to
wherever
adjust
we
our
are.
time.
Yeah, just don't get me confused with that daylight savings thing. But
Yeah, it's
don't
Sunday.
forget to turn your clocks back. Get that extra hour of sleep that you missed back in the springtime. And
Okay,
we'll see
you guys. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.